And we are live, y'all. Today we'll be discussing Devil's Candy with Patrick of Have Cheatable View, Night of Night Watch Zone, and Coriander, also of Night Watch Zone. Welcome, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man.
Nice.
Doing good.
Sweet. So I don't know that I'm going to be as good as at directing these discussions as you guys, but I'll give it a go. The movie Devil's Candy. I loved it. Do you guys have any initial thoughts you want to share? Patrick, what's your sort of general initial thoughts on this movie?
I thought this movie was brilliant. I thought it was really interesting. It had so many different avenues. Really liked the acting. The acting is strong throughout the whole movie. The young actress Kira Klasko, who played the daughter. I certainly hope that she's just going to college right now because she hasn't done anything since this movie. But I'm hoping she's going to school and she hasn't retired because she's really good, very talented.
She was good, yeah. Knight, how about you?
I agree. This movie was wow. You know, it started off and I was kind of like, what's going on? And then, you know, it just takes these nice twists and turns that I wasn't expecting. And I always love, especially when we talk about horror movies, I love those types of movies that do things that you don't expect and it works and it's earned. You know what I'm saying? And this movie did that. It was a really cool story that just seemed to just open up as it went along. And Pruitt Taylor Vince, he was something in this movie. And of course, I had seen him in other things like, you know, Identity and you know, some other things. But he was fantastic in this movie. So, yeah, it was good.
He was, definitely. Coriander, how about you?
You know, this was a really good movie. You know, it had a simple yet effective story. And I mean, as it goes along, it just gets more creepier and creepier. I mean, and yeah, the acting in this, it's great, especially from Pruitt. I mean, damn, he's fucking creepy.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
he does creepy really well, yeah. He's got those eyes, you know?
Is that move, man?
Yeah, it's like a disease that he has. But I noticed it first time I saw him in Jacob's Ladder, I think was the first thing I saw him in. And I was like, what the fuck is up with that dude's eyes? Hobbs in the house saying he is hungry for something sweet, maybe some devil's candy.
What's up, Hobbs?
I love this movie too. I think it is a very clear-cut narrative, but there's also a lot of depth and nuance to how it's told that I really liked. So I think we'll sort of get into some of that as we go on discussing it. But yeah, great film, like you guys all said, very well acted. I loved all the characters in it. So yeah, I guess let's get into it. We start with Ray Smiley in the house with interesting name, right? Ray Smiley.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, the family is called, they're the Hellmans. Well, I mean, what the hell? A little on the nose. You got Jesse Hellman as the father, Astrid Hellman as the wife, and Zoe Hellman as the daughter. But we don't meet them yet. We start with Ray playing the guitar, trying to drown out these voices that he keeps hearing, ultimately murdering his mother. And throwing her down the stairs, I guess, so it ends up looking like an accident. But just a creepy dude right off the bat in his fucking tracksuit, his pristine tracksuit.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie gets like just so fucking shabby. But it's an interesting sort of mirrors his descent into the sort of shabbiness of what he's going through. But at any rate, we meet the family. And what did you guys think of these characters, like off the bat? Patrick, what did you think?
Well, you definitely could tell that there was a struggling family. Ethan Embry, he comes across as definitely as, Jesse is, definitely see that under a lot of strain, but he still has hope. His family still believes in him. His wife and his daughter, especially his daughter, really believes in him. So they get over and got that house. I mean, it looked really promising. You know, it looked like things were going to look up for them, and you were really happy for them. And the way the real estate agent, you know, explained what happened in the house, you know, he had to disclose it. You know, he didn't disclose it in such a scary way that it would cause instant, you know, like uneasiness. It was just like it was an accident, you know, and you know, bad stuff happened, but it's still a great house and very affordable. And I like the family. I thought they were a really good unit.
Yeah, I did too. What do you think of them, Knight?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that that was the glue of the story, you know, to really make you care about what was going on, and they were very believable as a family. And like Patrick said, the daughter, played by Kiara, she was great. You know, anytime you see, or at least for me, anyways, when you see a young actor or actress that really can captivate you in a movie, you know, especially, you know, these movies are usually an hour and whatever long. I give a lot of credit, and I think that she was fantastic. And you could see that she had a really strong relationship with her father, and like Patrick was saying, believed in him, and that really set up a lot of what was going to happen later on in the movie. Mm-hmm. And it made sense. It all connected really well. So yeah, I thought the family was great.
Coriander, what about you?
I thought they were the strongest element of this film, was this family. You know, they were caring, and like Knight said, they're so relatable, you know, and yeah, and I was, you know, usually I don't feel, well, you get into characters and you worry about them, but this, yeah, I was like genuinely worried about the fate of this family, and especially for this young girl, because my God, if this was happening to one of my kids, holy shit. Yeah, it's a scary thing to think of. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's also like believable too, because this crazy shit, this could happen, you know? So yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I love the family. I thought they were very cool. Like, it felt like a family I could be friends with, you know, like someone I grew up with in high school. Right. They got married, had a kid, and I like want to go hang out with them. Mm-hmm. And I thought the relationship between the daughter and the father was like just super sweet, man. You know what I mean?
It was.
I mean, most girls really are like that. You know I'm a daddy's girl, and yeah, so and they portrayed this so well, their relationship and the love for one another, and yeah, it was great.
I think it really helped too was that the daughter was a really good person too. You know. Yeah. She wasn't materialistic. She didn't complain. You know, she was nervous about going to do school, but she wasn't complaining. She wasn't embittered. She wasn't talking about her past or her friends or whatever. You know, she went along with what was best for the family, and it really showed because there was no resentment toward her mother or her father.
Yeah, and she also said a line that I thought was really, really cool, and you don't hear it very often nowadays, but she quoted what her father had told her about treating others the way you'd want to be treated. And I was just like, all right, good for you, young person. You know, so she really was a good person at heart, which was cool.
Mm-hmm. And I love that they bonded over heavy metal too.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That was cool.
Yeah. It was great, and you can see like the look on when they're like in the car headbanging. The wife's face. Just like,
that was cool.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
It's funny because obviously my ex was like all he listened to is metal, so this kind of brought back a little some, you know, I don't want to say memories, but yeah, you know, it kind of did. This movie, I liked it, but then again I didn't because. Yeah, it's, you know.
I get that.
It's a great movie.
I mean, it's great when you can relate to a film, though. You know, it really like brings it sort of closer to your heart. You know,
right?
So they buy the house, they move in, and then we see, of course, Jesse Hellman, the father, is a struggling artist, and he's in the studio. And we get like this movie, by the way, has a fantastic fucking soundtrack. If you like metal, right. So we have like this painting montage of him to Pantera's "By Demons Be Driven," which is a great song. And if you don't know Pantera, then you wouldn't know that it's called "By Demons Be Driven."
Band, yeah.
And they remix it to be instrumental, so you don't hear him singing like "By demons be driven," but he's being driven by demons to paint this upside down cross. He like loses himself in this painting, right?
Right.
And it's just I thought it was a really cool use of song. Sort of one of those subtle things that, like, unless you know the name of the song, you're not going to really catch. But if you do, then you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting that he used that song right there, you know?
Agreed.
But he is starting to hear the same voices as Ray Smiley, right? So it's sort of like at the beginning stages of that. And he just sort of initially considers it like a muse, right?
Yeah.
Well, I
so,
thought, like, isn't it? I thought, though, they were, like, listening, they heard different voices. I didn't think they were both hearing the same thing. Like, I was thinking, you know, Ray was obviously hearing these voices telling him to kill. And I thought that Jesse was hearing voices of the victims, and where, you know, that's kind of like how I took things. I don't know if you guys, maybe I'm off, but
I think he was hearing the same voices, though. I think that was the hitch. That was that, you know, Ray had been overwhelmed by him, and the only way he could actually drown him out was playing, play a loud noise. That's why he was jamming on his guitar.
Right, but Jesse was painting the victims. You know, he was painting those victims in the painting, and he found them. He actually found them buried where, you know, Ray.
Well, I
put
think
them.
I think the way I took it was the painting to me was kind of his release, you know, to help drown or to deal with the voices that he heard, was the way I kind of took it. And by doing so, connecting with the victims.
Well, see, the victims weren't there yet. I mean, the little boy on the swing, I mean, he's drawing them, but they hadn't been killed yet. And remember, he also painted his daughter on there. But so, you know, she wasn't dead yet either. So, I mean, as far as that goes, I think what was happening is I think he was being pushed the same pathway as Ray was. I think he was headed down that same pathway until a key moment happened. Until a key point happened, then I think something else did.
Well, I think what's interesting about this movie is it's sort of a movie about just a broad movie about temptation and sort of the embodiment of evil, right? So he's being tempted by the same voices, but the way he reacts is slightly different than Ray Smiley, right? And that's sort of the whole story arc there. Because he's has this muse moment, and he realizes he loses himself in it, right? And I can't remember if this is the moment where he is late to pick up his daughter because he loses himself in the drawing, you know, listening to the voices or the painting and doing the painting. But it is starting to cause like issues, him being so like, these voices are causing issues for him, right? And and he in fact, you know, he's stressed out, he's broke as fuck, he's looking at a bill, and he goes to this gallery, the Belial Gallery, with the image. Exactly. Well, and interesting, Belial in the Hebrew Bible, right, it is sort of like a personification, but it's also just used to talk about people who are worshiping like false idols, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it has a lot of different uses throughout, you know, various things. But he goes to the gallery, and you have like the gallery woman who's there is dressed in all red, very devilish. And even before this, you have Ray Smiley in his hotel room, and he's watching a televangelist, and the televangelist is talking about how the devil is the devil that we know, the red cartoon character, the mask you see at the store, the you know, advertisement with a little devil for like deviled ham or whatever the fuck. All those things aren't the devil. What really is the devil is you know, evil and the personification of him, and they show like, you know, like Nazis and all this stuff
within ourselves.
Yeah, within ourselves. And so that sort of sets up that whole what you see happening, I think. And then yeah, he goes and he says this painting is different, you know, I had a muse, and he leaves it with them. But yeah, what did you guys think about the Belial Gallery in this movie? Patrick?
I thought it was like I thought it was interesting. I thought it was a little bit of a red herring in one sense, because what I really liked about Burns directing about this movie is that he left so many pathways. It's so subjective, you know. There's no, if you really take a good hard look at it, he basically planted a lot of paths to where you could go, and it would fit in this movie. And one of them is that gallery, because the gallery goes down there because he's obviously had a relationship with Leonard before they moved into the house. And so he's come down there, and now he's meeting Leonard again. And, you know, now he's got a painting worthwhile, and Leonard's now he's intrigued. And basically the house has triggered something. There's obviously the house has triggered something within Jesse, and now Leonard or Belial, now he's really interested in that. And he makes him an offer. I thought that was really interesting. And when he goes to the house, he basically tells Jesse, he says, your career is more important than your family.
Right.
This is more important than anything else. You can, you know, your daughter can wait a little bit more. You're you know, basically pushing him down another way he shouldn't be going. And then Jesse barely hangs on, and he goes to get his daughter, but then he has the incident on the road. I really liked the gallery aspect of it. I thought Tony Armadillo, who played Leonard, I think he came across highly creepy, highly effective, and very, very dangerous. And I like that aspect of it. But I did think he was a bit of a red herring, because I thought the root of the evil was the house.
The root of the evil is the house, but he also serves as sort of like a personification of the temptation of those voices, right? So he's trying to tempt him. He's like, come on, you know, what's 1 minute, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, he says, stop, dude. 1 minute is fucking everything in this case. Trust me. And that was a big turning point for him. I thought it was interesting that Leonard brought like hundreds of years old cognac to his house, like for like, what the hell are you doing bringing that around, dude? Like, it was kind of weird. But
yeah, I thought it was, you know, basically kind of paralleling him to the devil, basically. I mean, because again, like you guys were saying, he's tempting Jesse, you know, he's tempting him with materialistic things, your career, you know, the money, you'll be set for life and this and that. And, you know, like you said, Ben, he has this hundreds-year-old, you know, it's like, where'd you get that, dude? You know, so it's like, it's got all these angles of like the devil and the temptation into sin and so forth. And like you said, Patrick, Jesse was just barely holding on, just barely, you know, getting out of that. It's almost like being mesmerized by it, you know, and he barely hung on to kind of get out of that. And then, of course, like you were saying, he's barreling to go get his daughter and has the flat tire. As soon as he had that flat tire, Coriander was saying, "Oh shit, of course," you know what I mean. And it's almost like he knew that getting to his daughter, almost, at least the way I took it, would almost like bring him back out of the temptation, you know, into further sin, so to speak. You know what I mean? But fantastic stuff with the Belial stuff.
I liked it a lot too. Coriander, what did you think of that whole Belial angle?
Yeah, obviously he was no good, and Yeah, like y'all said, he wasn't interested into, his work and his paintings until he was, his mind was invaded by this thing that was, yeah, these voices. And yeah, it was a sticky situation. And yeah, it was such a bummer, because he knew he had to get his daughter, because they had that conversation, because he left her once and he left her all day and it was dark when he went and got her, and he
Yeah.
swore he'd never do it again. And
On our
yet
grave.
here,
On
and
our
by
grave.
chance, yeah, it's almost like the devil was preventing him from getting there, making that tire blow. And yeah,
Yep.
it was intense.
And it's almost like too is like, and by doing that, pulling him further away from the strength of love in his family, it'd be easier for him to descend down that road like Ray did. You know what I'm saying? So
definitely
yeah.
tempting him to listen to those voices who he's sort of like, at this point he's saying that is your muse, if you listen to these voices that are helping you create this art, then I can really help you out in all these ways. And he realizes that all those ways are sort of counterproductive at that moment for what he really needs, which is his family. And that's what his main love in life is. So but that's the temptation.
Did you guys catch the sly part after he lost the tire, right? I mean, he lost, not only did he lose the tire, but he also, there was no signal out there, and I could go with that too.
Yeah.
But the part that really got me was when he couldn't turn the car on. A blown tire will not make your car not work. But the fact that the car didn't turn over, that caught me. It's like, oh, okay, there's something going on down there. There's something a lot more than going on down there. And
I will say that instance where he's blows out the tire, there was a little more than just a tire blowout. There was a swerve. He hit a sign. It got caught up on the bottom of his car. Who knows what came loose?
Yeah.
But I do see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was actually fully expecting, though it didn't happen, but I was actually fully expecting Leonard to come by, slow down, look at him, and then just keep going. I was like, I really was like, okay, here it comes.
Yeah.
And then he turned around, and he ran like he ran like hell for the school.
Well, let's backtrack too for a moment, because Ray Smiley visits their house, before he even goes to the Belial Gallery, right? Ray Smiley just shows up and he's like distraught, confused. I mean, he's a crazy motherfucker, obviously. But that's when he becomes enamored with Zoe, right?
Yeah.
He sees the flying V on her arm. He's like, I got one just like that. And she's like, oh, you got a flying V? That's amazing. And he ends up leaving the flying V for her. So he now, that's like him sort of ditching the only thing he has to distract him from the voices. And he further descends into his madness, right? They show him, show those kids at the park on the swing.
Oh man, that was so creepy.
That was fucking really well done too, because you have him walking through the woods and you see the dog run into the woods, and you're like, oh shit, that older kid's gonna get it. And they show him coming up behind the little kid on the fence with the rock, and what just a brutal way to like. That's his MO is smashing people with a fucking rock, and that was brutal, man. The slow motion shot of him behind the kid, and then immediately cutting to the painting of the kid's face. I thought that was really beautifully done.
Yeah, I thought so too. And if you go back and look at that painting, there is a fork. You can see already what was going to happen to that kid, because he drew his head. And then he drew the darkness, the black, and then he drew the body. And that was just, when you saw it and what was happening, it just made it all that more impactful. And it was very disturbing.
Yeah. Dark subject matter, very dark subject matter. You usually don't have kids getting killed and dismembered in movies. They don't show that. They actually do show something that was really very cool, I thought, which was, he brings the kid into the hotel room. He puts on his little garbage bag poncho, and the televangelist is on the TV preaching some more. And while he's preaching, they do a montage of him dismembering the body, but it's like close up, shallow depth of view shots of a saw, of blood, of this, of that, and it's intermixed with close up, shallow depth of view shots of Jesse painting. So you have like this really interesting comparison being drawn to the sort of palette with the paint and the blood of the kid and the tool, the hacksaw and the brush. I thought it was really interesting and very well done.
Yeah.
Did that stick out to you guys as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. It was very. I like. Yeah. It was, and it was just. You were just sort of thinking, it just, are they really gonna go there with that kid? Are they really gonna? And it's like, yeah, we're doing it. Come along. It was like, damn, it was vicious.
Yeah.
And it also sort of draws like, I thought, it sort of brings like Jesse Hellman sort of hearing those voices, and it sort of like bonds him to Ray, So this is like the two things that can happen depending on how you react to the stimuli that's going into you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're sort of like showing like Ray, which is like, okay, this has descended into some bad shit, and they're showing Jesse at the beginning, and this is sort of like, that's just his character arc. It's like, will Jesse descend into those voices? Will he be tempted by the Belial gallery? And like, will he lose touch of like what's really important to him?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, Zoe ends up getting abducted, right, by Ray.
Yeah.
Oh
man.
Before
that scene, I was just gonna say that scene when she's sleeping in her bed and he like is laying there and she opens her eyes. I mean, good God, that was like so freaking creepy, man.
Yeah, it was.
That was very creepy. And just like the things he said, like he's like, he wants me to do that thing I don't want to do. I don't want to do it. It's just like, Jesus fuck, man.
Right. So it almost makes you, but it makes you think, is this guy possessed or is he like mentally ill?
Or both.
Crazy.
Both, yeah.
True. Yeah.
I think he was fighting himself very much. He didn't want to hurt her, and that's one of the reasons why he killed that.
He had a bond
boy
with her.
Instead. He killed the little boy instead. To hold it off. And it didn't. It overpowered him, and he had no way of turning those voices off in his head, because by the time he got there, his head must have been like ringing like a bell.
Well,
there's no quieting down.
They don't actually like get into why the voices are associated with the house, but that's his childhood home, and he grew up there. He's like, he had like so many years of these voices corrupting him that he like Jesse's just at the very brink of it, but he grew up with that,
Well, and they also mentioned, not to jump ahead, but at the end they talked about some stuff that he did as a little boy, a young boy
with the Rock. Yep.
So this was a lifelong thing that he had been afflicted with, dealing with, being absorbed with,
Ultimately, my guess would be it drove him mad, like he was clearly not super sane there in the movie. And I think I don't know that he started out that way. I think those voices and living in that house for so long sort of made him that way.
Yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, so that scene in the bed was creepy as fuck. And he is sort of, I don't know, he sees her, I think in some sense he sees her as a child in the house that he grew up when he was a child, so he's kind of relating to her, and he sees the guitar on her arm, so there's like a connection drawn. So he doesn't really want to kill her, but she also becomes like his obsession, like really is the sweetest candy, right?
Right. And they win. At least they try to win, but thank God, we know how it ends. But it's like
that's something. The ending is definitely is. I see the same ending. I think you did, Coriander. The fact that the devil's candy was actually pieces of dismembered kids, man, that's just sort of fucked up beyond belief. That's what's the devil's candy. You really want to know that, and then when you find out what it is that it's really twisted.
I just sort of viewed the devil's candy as
brilliant writing, because I mean, hats off to Sean Byrne for writing such a powerful flick. I mean, going places that a lot of filmmakers wouldn't have touched this.
Yeah.
This is not an easy movie to watch.
Right.
Sorry.
What were you gonna say? What were you gonna say, Ben? The way that you took the devil's candy?
Oh, I didn't necessarily think that the candy, like, I didn't think that the dismemberment was like the integral. I just sort of felt like the kids as victims were the devil's candy, right?
Yeah. I thought it was. I kind of looked at it like that too. Not necessarily the physical parts of the kids, but the kids themselves, like the essence of these kids is the candy, and that's kind of how I took it too.
Like when she was,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah. No, you go.
Say, like when she's crying and he tastes her tear.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Jesus fuck.
What I was going to say too is that the great thing about this movie, kind of like what Patrick was saying, is the way that it's written, you can kind of see a lot of different angles where, you know what I'm saying, you could take it a lot of different ways. And I think that's always, well, at least more often than not, a really good, it makes it for a good movie, because you can have multiple people watch it and take away so many different things. So that's, to me, very, very good.
There's also a lot of depth. I've seen this movie a number of times. There's a lot of depth and a lot of like discovery that you can continue to have in subsequent viewings. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of like visual things, like the red cross on the door, and like, I mean, just a lot of things like that you can really just like go, oh man, that's cool, or like, I didn't notice that the first time. It's very deep and nuanced in that way, I think. Coriander, what did you think about the devil's candy, like the actual kids being of the devil's candy?
It's it's a scary thing to think of, because children are so innocent and precious, and to have, someone who can take an innocent life like that and like it was nothing, and cut them up and put them in a luggage bag and bury them. I mean, it was brutal, and it like I said, it's a movie that, I didn't hear of. I've never really seen anything like it, and it's a good movie.
I think also because they are like just the sort of pure innocence, right? Then damaging them or hurting them or whatever is sort of like the ultimate corruption in a way, right?
Well, not only that, but it's like their soul, it's so pure and sweet, and it probably just tastes so damn good because it's just so innocent. And
I thought it was really interesting too. It was like, a movie like that, a lot of times like when it shows Ray, he hits the little boy with the rock, and you're thinking, okay, Jesus Christ, that, right? But I thought was really like shocking was when they brought him back, and all of a sudden he's alive. And not only is he alive, but they actually go inside that damn hotel room, and he's sitting there and he's preparing, and you can hear that little kid struggling and crying, and you see that. It's like I'm sitting there going like, Jesus Christ, it's like you're going places, you're going some places. I mean, you are taking you are a very daring storyteller. I don't know, like I said, I don't know very many directors that actually go that way. I think a lot of times, they would just end it, and let your mind take over. But so you'd actually sit there and hear what was going to happen.
Yeah,
that's just really just like, and then you see the girl, and you're thinking, oh shit, you're just looking around for some sort of a little bit of, as a viewer, you're looking for some sort of hope, like don't let this happen, because you already saw it happen before. And now you really don't want it to happen to this because you like the girl. The girl.
You're talking about when Zoe is taped up in the bathroom? Yeah.
Yeah. That was a rough scene, man. The tension in that scene was fantastic, and the way that it was shot, and also as Ray was preparing in the other room and so forth, and she was finally able to get a little bit of the tape off, and she was smart enough to stick it onto the floor and roll out of it and stuff. And it was pulse pounding, man. It was very well done, very well shot, and both actors were fantastic in that scene. It was a difficult scene to watch.
Yeah.
Just like the previous scene with the child that he does murder. I mean, it's like, wow. Like you said, Patrick, it's like you're going there and it's like uncomfortable as hell.
Yeah, they play with time there a lot too, because like the real time that it would actually take for him to walk to the bathroom and open the door, based on like the initial her peeling the tape off, it doesn't really match up. So that creates so much tension, because she's like, you know, he's like slowly show him like take a step towards the door, and then her like put the thing down and start rolling, and then him like reaching towards the door and like look, you know, it's just like created a lot of tension, you know.
Yeah, it was well done.
Absolutely. But she does end up getting away, right?
Barely.
He gets her shoe, but she ends up getting away, and we cut to the police place, right? And Jesse and Astrid are coming running in, and of course he was supposed to be there to pick her up, but he was being distracted by Belial and blown out tires and stuff, and she just looks at him and says, you fucking promised.
The way she said you, and you know, like, damn, you know, you just felt so heartbreaking for the dad, you know. You know, because he really had tried, you know, he really did, and he wasn't like a guilty look on his face, like, yeah, I know I fucked up, but I'm here now. It was like, no, I was here for the very get-go as best I could. And so he felt nothing but sorrow for him, you know, the way you could feel the trust starting to fracture, you know.
And both of them in that scene did a really great job. I mean, Ethan Embry didn't say a word, and you could just see it all over his face.
Yeah, and he was fantastic.
Yeah,
he really was.
I mean, he did. You know, we talk about that sometimes. He did a lot of face acting, and it's not easy to do. And he had so many emotions in his eyes throughout this movie, you know, and it really was a great performance. And it's these are the types of movies that it's great to enjoy, but you also feel like it's too bad it's underrated or not talked about, or more people don't get a chance to see it, because like you guys said, he didn't even say anything, but you heard everything he wanted to say, you know, in his face, in his eyes, you know.
I gotta say, I mean, you just said something. I just want to take another opportunity to thank you guys for doing this series, for taking a chance on it, because there's a lot of movies that IFC Midnight puts out, and a lot of IFC movies that put out nobody knows about. There's a ton of movies just like this or better that I've watched myself. Nobody knows about. No one talks about. And this is the reason why I keep on telling them, like, yeah, there's other great stuff out here, and this is proof of it. I mean, this is a very strong movie.
So this movie was one I discovered by watching a YouTube video a couple years back. I think it was maybe Nightmare Maven or someone just mentioned like, oh, I love The Devil's Candy. And I was like, that's an interesting name. And I went and I watched it, and I was like, this movie for me is such a satisfying watch. You know, there's tension, there's darkness, but then at the end there is, the arc. I mean, we'll get to the end here in a little bit, but it's a very satisfying watch, I thought. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I think everyone who's seen it, I mean, it's a well-loved movie from horror people, but it's also one that's not talked about too much. You know what I mean? So I'm glad.
I thought it was a good sign when a veteran who's watched hundreds of horror movies, and I do mean hundreds, if not thousands. Hobbs actually told me, you know, he came up to me and says, I watched Devil's Candy, and I got to tell you, man, that movie gave me fucking nightmares. And I'm going like, you know what? That's exactly what a movie's supposed to do. That's exactly what a movie, something like this, is supposed to do, man. It's supposed to move you, because this movie here, it moved me too. You know, not on the quite on the same level as like say a Dark Song, but it still moved me because I'm still seeing there's so much there. There's so much depth to the story.
Yeah.
And it's massive filmmaking.
And again, the character, the family, you really, based on their performance and just the way the characters are written, you really care about that family. I did, at least. I was like, oh shit! And when they're in peril, you're concerned about them. So that's a credit to the actors again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But at the police station, Jesse is asking the cop, like, did he say why he did it? He's saying this, the guy has, when he was little, he hit a 7-year-old girl in the head and tried to bury her, and it ended up in a psychiatric ward, right? He said, did he say why he did it? And he said, yeah, it was the voices, right? The devil. And he knows at that moment, he's like, I've heard those voices.
Right. Yeah. The revelation.
Yeah. And of course they leave the police station and they go back to the house with a police escort. And the police are going to be there keeping watch. And we go into the third act here. And because the police are there, there's a little bit like, okay, well, there's some safety, but
right.
As we see, Ray is a driven dude, literally.
Literally.
Sadly, that pun was intended. What did you guys think about the sort of beginning of that third act there when he comes a calling on the house? Patrick, what did you think about the way that was executed?
That's probably the one thing that got me a little confused was the fact that they knew Ray's history. They knew him very well. I mean, obviously the cops had plenty of encounters with him throughout the years, like in the hotel. When he got to the hotel where he first checked in, he was playing his guitar, and the policeman came over there and talked to him like, okay, you got to turn it down. I don't want to come back. He wasn't busting his chops. He was just sitting there going like, hey, turn it down. I don't want to get you in trouble. They had a relationship with him. And I'm just a little, the only part about the movie that made me confused a little bit was they knew who this guy was, what he was about. And I'm just was really surprising to see them to sit there and send only 2 cops out. To me, I'm going, this guy's like, he just got done bursting into his house. He tied up a 14-year-old girl. And certainly by now, though it's not mentioned, but certainly by now, the little boy would have been reported as missing. And as most cops will tell you, in small towns, and especially in a small town, they always go back to offenders. So the little boy was missing. Ray would have been one of the first people on the radar. They would have been already looking for him, even before what he did with Zoe. And I just thought that it was a little bit, they underplayed this a little bit. I think it would have been more interesting if they would have, maybe sent out a couple more cops out there, as make it a little bit more heftier. It's more of a threat. Just sending 2 cops out, I don't know.
I didn't feel like the cops had the same insight we did watching the movie. Personally, I didn't feel like the cop who went to respond to the noise complaint at the hotel actually knew who he was. I think he was just like, dude, come on, stop playing guitar. I don't want to have to fucking come back out here, Yeah. And I think the only incident that he really had was when he was a kid, right? So they don't expect him, when he's a kid and when he abducted her, they don't expect him to be like, that kid wasn't found murdered or anything. He's just a missing person at this point, Not really good sense of how much time passed, but they didn't. I wouldn't expect the police to dispatch a battalion of police for one.
No,
one
not battalion, but there had been. Obviously, we saw this by watching, but there have been other missing kids, and this is a small town. This is not a big metropolitan area. This is a small town in Texas, and you just feel like they would have been just a little bit. Ray would have been on the radar just a little bit more, just a little bit.
Even if he was though, Knight and Coriander, you chime in on this too, but even if he was, like, 2 police officers for one crazy dude seems perfectly fine. They don't expect him to, he's not like a superhero or
right.
like
Well, yeah. What I was gonna say is, and you see this a lot in movies, and I mean, there's obviously some real world parallels to it. But cops usually, sending the 2 cops there, they usually think, yeah, we can handle it because we're standing outside, and we're ready to do what we're gonna do. Now, of course, the other part of that is it allows Ray to jumping forward a little bit, but it also allows Ray to be able to get into the house a little bit more easily because they're not portraying him as, he's not Michael Myers. Right. He's not going to mow through, a battalion of people. He's really an opportunist more of anything. He's not, even when he goes to the store to get the gasoline and stuff before this, he's just kind of, it's almost like he's just getting by as a killer. It's not like he's well thought out. Right. We talked about how he's kind of having he has a little bit disability going on. So I think by having the 2 cops also, it allows it to be a little bit more believable how he could overtake them without being, like you were saying, Ben, like a super killer.
Yeah.
So
and it is like it's 2 police officers versus 1 regular dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those odds are pretty good, and they even more so. I mean, I think they were just like, we're just going to be like a deterrent, I mean, some dude comes, sees 2 cops at a fucking house that he wants to get into, he's going to be like, I'll come back later or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that they even expected him to engage with them. I think they thought maybe 2 would be sufficient.
There is one aspect we didn't cover real quick. I want to go circle back to it, and that is where Jesse makes his choice, and the choice he makes is key to the movie, and that's when he got home and he destroyed the picture.
Yep.
Good point. Yeah.
That was the single defining moment, because that was his arc to the he's at the Y. He's either going to go down the path of damnation or the path of salvation. And when he destroys the picture, he's saved. But as we see, I just thought that I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a key moment in the movie, is that when he destroyed the picture, he saved himself.
Yeah,
and
especially since, like, earlier, he tries
and he couldn't.
Just can't summon the will to do it. So he really finds his resolve in that moment going into the 3rd act, and his resolve is quite apparent there in the 3rd act.
And I think it also streamed from his love of his family, specifically his daughter, for what had happened, and the disappointment and the sadness of letting her down and almost going down that temptation road. So I think once again he was pulling strength from his family, specifically his daughter, Absolutely. To be able to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get right into this 3rd act. We got the mom and the daughter. He's out in the studio, right? Slashing the painting, and mom and the daughter are in the house, and they hear that crash, and the screaming. And that kicks it all off.
That's screaming.
Yeah.
So that deputy was in a world of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, you really see how driven Ray is in his sort of quest here.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of how that 3rd act played out? How he got into the house and sort of set everything in motion? Matt, what did you think of that?
I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was well done and well framed. I thought it was and hearing that policewoman scream, and it was just, damn. It's like, you wanted to know what happened to her, because she was screaming for an awful long time. It was like, and then you kept on waiting for the stop. You kept on waiting for okay, then the tension would go up, because now you don't hear anything. But she just kept going and going. It was just like it ratcheted up the tension.
You don't see it initially. You see Zoe the fear in her eyes and her backing into a corner going, no. And the mom's like going out. She's like, don't fucking go out there. But the mom does go out and she sees Ray with a rock dispatch the female police officer.
Those damn rocks, man.
I know, man. Brutal, right? Just brutal. And then he gets a gun, right? This is the first time he has like a genuine weapon in this story. And that whole scene where he goes into the house, he goes down into the basement area or whatever that was. You hear gunshots and screaming, and he comes dragging her up. You have basically, it's like a stationary camera shot, right?
Yeah.
I guess we will say when he gets into the house, he shoots Jesse in the chest, sort of like in the lung area. And he's like laid out. So you have him on the ground, you have a stationary camera looking at the door, you just hear the sounds, so you're filling in the imagery. And he comes dragging Zoe up and leaves the house, and the camera just stays there for like an uncomfortable amount of time.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, man, what is happening here? And ultimately the mom ends up sort of coming out, crawling out of that door.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about how all that played out?
Had me on the edge of my seat, man. I was just like, first of all, and I don't mean to backtrack, but when he first comes to the door and Jesse was kind of hiding kind of behind the door area, and he had the what was it, a bat or something?
Yeah,
Something like that.
Yeah. And I just I was just getting into it, man, because I was like, look, man, as soon as he opens that door, I mean, you just gotta, this is your whole life, your family you're saving. And but it was realistic in the sense that, I mean, Jesse's not like an MMA fighter. He's just a guy who loves his family. So he messed that up. And then, of course, Ray just starts popping the gun. He's not really even aiming at first because he's, he's not
amateur.
He's an amateur. Yeah. So I thought that was the way it was shot and shown, it just made me even more anxious and on the edge of my seat. It was a fantastic scene. And, I got all into it. I mean, Coriander, I'll let you go. Cause I mean, we were like, what's going on? It's crazy.
Yeah. It was a crazy scene. And one thing that kind of really irritated me is, I know if I had somebody in my house with a gun, I'd be getting out of the house. I wouldn't be hiding somewhere in the house. I would get out and run. And that's what I wish these two ladies did, because they would have avoided everything else that happened, and I mean, the mother wouldn't have been shot, and the daughter, I mean, you feel so bad for this poor girl. She's so scared, and you just can't believe that, my God, this guy just keeps coming, and it's
relentless.
It is.
And he goes out and comes back in with the gasoline. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the mom comes up, she sees Jesse on the floor. She sees them coming up, and she's like, please, she's like pleading with him. And he gets the gun out. Yeah. And that scene too, another super tense scene, him holding the gun to her head, and her sort of like last words to her daughter are, I love you, right?
Yeah, man.
And they show him pull the trigger, and the gun's out of bullets.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, it's like he doesn't understand. He's like shaking it. Like what? He's just such a fucking, it shows his detachment from sort of like reality and everything. And he's just like, okay, whatever. And goes up the stairs, trailing the gasoline behind him, and lights it on fire, right? So the stairs up to where him and Zoe are now off limits or uncrossable.
In her bedroom, And
in
he
her
like
bedroom,
that. They're on the bed, and he gets the fire. Yeah, that was such a crazy ass scene, man.
It is.
It's so awesome that and it's so great that the father, he finally realized that, holy shit, my family's about to die. It was almost like he didn't have this wound anymore, because his mission now was saving his daughter. He pulled his wife from the burning house, and he ends up crawling up the trestle thing to get to his daughter's window, or he puts a ladder or something, right? Wasn't it a
Yeah,
ladder?
the
Yeah.
latter, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I mean
I
that
think
was such an intense scene.
I thought that last scene, because it actually fits the movie in a sense, but I thought the last scene, whereas before we've seen the devil side of the whole movie, the house, the kids being killed, the voices in the head, the pictures and everything else. But now I see the other side of it is like, for every all evil has to face off against good. And I think because Jesse destroyed that picture, and he basically said he saved himself. And now he's in a position to save his family. And you get the real sort of sly impact that he had divine help, because that last scene should have never played out that way if it was just the real world. You had a feeling that Jesse had some help.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also,
You had a feeling that, like, when he's laying on the floor and his eyes opens up and he says, "Where is she?" It was just like, wait a minute, this guy's on death's door, because he saw you, because you're right, and he got shot right through the lung. That guy would not be able to just get up and do anything. But all of a sudden he just opens his eyes and says, "Where is she?" And then he just gets up there and goes up there and takes care of business. And I just got the strong feeling, though they didn't say it, they only implied it, but he had some help.
Yeah.
and I would say, I'll go even say, like, at this point, Ray and Jesse are sort of the embodiments of decisions you can make down the same path, right? One towards righteous and one towards, like, whatever the opposite of righteousness is. And so they square off as those two sort of like conceptual entities, right? And the ending of this is so fucking satisfying, man. The imagery is metal as fuck. The sound design is amazing that go with it. I loved it, man. Absolutely loved it. You have basically Ray and Zoe on the bed surrounded by flames. Then you have Jesse tackles him and is fighting with him, right? And Ray gets the better of him by sticking his finger in his bullet wound. And Ray walks back through the flames. As he does this, you see him start to get burnt, right? And his eyes become like flames. So he becomes like a really pretty strong like imagery of the devil, right? And Jesse takes that fucking flying bee and dispatches him. Just brutally beats him to death and stabs him a bunch of times with this broken neck of the guitar. I thought it was amazing. I thought it looked great with the sound design, the slow motion, like, I thought it was amazing. Very like satisfying too, the way it all.
I was just gonna say it was satisfying, because he deserved it. I mean, this guy was sick. I mean, he's a child killer, and it was great.
Yeah, you didn't feel anything. You didn't feel anything for him at all. You just wanted him to die in the worst possible way, which he did.
Yeah.
And I mean, also you have like the embodiment of the righteous versus sort of like the temptation of evil or whatever. And I mean, you really feel that whole, like, beyond those two characters, it feels like a triumph of good, right, over evil at that moment.
Oh yeah.
And of course, just to put the little cherry on top,
family.
And put the cherry on top, like Zoe, who her belief in her dad has been sort of questioned a little. He's like, "Come, just jump fast over the flames. I'll catch you. I promise." And of course she does, and he catches her. So you have like sort of like the resolution of that story arc too, which was quite beautiful and touching as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, the room was so involved in flames. I mean, he just know that he had to have help, because that whole house, it's set up by gasoline. It fires everywhere, but they didn't get smoke inhalation. They didn't get burned. And then he's sitting there going like, "Trust me," and his hands out like this to catch her. Just trust. He jumped across. I mean, it was awesome. Awesome ending.
Yeah, it was. I agree.
Even the very, very end, at the very end afterwards, where he gets led to where Ray has buried his victims, and he's sitting there, and he looks heavenward. He looks heavenward because he's done exactly what he felt like he's had to do.
Yeah, those souls are free.
Yeah.
Set them free, found their bodies, their closure. It was a beautiful movie. It's very spiritual in a lot of ways too, you know. And,
absolutely.
I love this. This is a wonderful pick.
Strong Jesus imagery too in that moment where he's looking up. It's sort of like the sunrise, so there's like almost like a heavenly light on his face, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what did you think in general of that sort of that whole face off with him and Ray at the end? I don't think we heard from you about that sort of the way.
Yeah, I definitely think it was basically a parallel of good versus evil, you know, the salvation versus the damnation, and how those two characters, like you said, throughout the whole film, they took those different paths, you know, and it was shot well. I was on the edge of my seat. I'm sitting there, and of course I kept thinking, come on, do it, and get out of the house, you know, save Zoe, you know, and that tells me also that I was so invested, you know, in Zoe and in Jesse as characters. And when you have something like that in a horror movie, it's pretty cool, you know, because horror movies in general, you know, there's so many boxes that you have to check. You know, you have to have scares, you have to have some type of a story, you have to have this, you have to have that. And so to be that invested in these characters, it just shows that they really took the time to do it the right way. And yeah, it was very satisfying. I was on the edge of my seat from the time that Ray got into the house all the way up until, you know, when Zoe was rescued. I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, great third act.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And I love too, like so they end with sort of him sort of looking heavenward, right? And then fade to black, and For Whom the Bell Tolls from Metallica comes up, and the credits are done in like a Metallica font. I was like, that added really a lot to the sort of the satisfying nature of the movie, man. It just like I could just sit there and watch those whole credits, listen to that song, and go, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah, that was a great song to end out too, man. Because it's like, okay, if you're gonna do Metallica, you know what's up. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah. So sorry, go on.
There was one. No, go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish.
I was going to say, let's just talk about our sort of initial final thoughts on this. Patrick, what did you sort of like? Do you have any overall thoughts you want to say as we're wrapping this up a little bit?
Yeah, I there was one interesting aspect about this movie that I noticed too, and it was in the back of my head for a minute until I figured it out. Taylor Vance, you know, when he played Ray, and he's sitting there, and he's all the voices coming up there, and he's got all those voices in his head, and he's trying to tone them down. And it reminded me that he played a similar character in Constantine. He played the psychic priest. Yeah, and he had all the voices in his head, and he was trying to drink them out instead of, you know, playing music. He was trying to drown it out with alcohol, and he basically played basically the role reversal. You know, he's a Catholic a priest, and I thought that was interesting. He played it pretty much the same way, and I thought that was like, I'm more like, wow, so he had a brother. But I thought that was an interesting similarity. He's a good actor.
He was a great actor, and I thought like throughout the movie, his descent into like sort of that evil path that he was on, he physically just kept getting more and more shabby. His clothes were more and more dirty and sweat stained and like just filthy. I thought it was like really interesting how they like visually represented that as well, his descent into all that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. He was fantastic. And the other thing too is, as bad as he was in the end, you know, as far as just the evil, in the beginning, it was almost like you're trying to, you know, figure him out. Like, oh, what's going on with this guy? You know, you didn't know exactly, you know, if he was going to be a straight villain, you know. And I think that was like you said, and he, you know, physically his clothes and everything, he got more shabby. So I think it was a really cool character arc for him. And it came, and I guess what I mean is it kind of came up out of nowhere in a little bit for me, because I didn't expect to see him like, wow, he's killing children. This sucks. So very cool performance by him. And like we mentioned, some of his other work, he's good, man. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh crap, I know who that is.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him do some more stuff, man, because he's got a charisma to him, and even portraying a character that is a little childlike and so forth. It's like you just get connected to him as far as watching a character in a movie. So I thought he was fantastic.
I mean, also his character arc, he starts out, he's always hesitant. He doesn't necessarily want to be evil. He's being corrupted.
Yes.
Like, he's also like physically trying to drown out the sound, right? I mean, that's his whole thing with the guitar. He doesn't want to do it, and then when his mom like makes him turn it off, that's when he can't contain it anymore. But through the movie, he doesn't delight in the evil acts he's doing. I guess
Right.
He's evil, and he's descended down this. He's like corrupted and all that stuff, but he's not like. He's not pure evil in the sense that he's really reveling in it. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Coriander, you have any final thoughts on this movie?
The cast, they made this movie believable. They made it. I felt for this family, and I cared for their well-being, and. In most movies, like I say, it takes a lot I don't want to say a lot, but it has to be good for a movie to really, get me to feel for them. And yeah, I mean, this movie wasn't very long. It was a little over an hour, like an hour, 19 minutes or something like that. And there was so much to it, like to all these movies that we've seen. I mean, they're not that long, but there's so much to them. And yeah, they're really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Fantastic movie. Loved it.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it to anyone. It's probably like one of the more heavy metal like movies I can think of. Someone says like, what's a good heavy metal horror movie for me to watch? I would say Devil's Candy. It just everything about it was pretty fucking amazing, and I loved it. So I'm glad we got a chance to discuss it.
Absolutely.
And it was a great discussion, guys.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It was a good movie, good discussion.
All right, so the next one of these, I think the plan is to have on Coriander's channel. Is that right?
No.
Well, yeah, it'll be on
Night Watch Zone.
Yeah, it'll be on Night Watch Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're doing the last Sunday of the month. So don't know what the movie. We lost Patrick. Looks like. Well, we will be back for another one, guys. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Night Coriander, thanks for the good discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. This was great. It was a great movie too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Enjoyed it. Patrick, wherever you are, somewhere in the internet. You can finish it up with us. Kevin, Professor Fox, anyone else? Larry, if you're still there, Rick, Sean, everyone who came by and hung out, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
And we will see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.